And the biggest news, obviously, maybe not, is Russian war. Are we going to war with Russia? NATO countries, are we going to war with Russia? It seems like, yes, Justin Trudeau was asked. He said, yeah, I fully support that. Let's absolutely do that. Keir Starmer says that. Joe Biden is on the beach, so it doesn't matter what he says. Kamala laughs whenever she's asked a question. So right, the U.S. is pending. But no, I think the U.S. is actually Blinken is committed to it. So fundamentally, all of the big Western countries agree at this point in time. And Canada's saying, us too. Yes, please sign us up for all of that, which is weird because didn't Canada used to be the country that was negotiating meetings and pushing for peace, right? Like, really, let's all calm down. Let's not lose our heads here. And Canada's saying, we've got it. We're going to fight Putin and we're going to win. Like, would you like to know more? And no, I don't think so, right? So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Russian war. Here we go. Gkov, says, isn't it wild how politicians can never agree on basic stuff, but the second there's talk of a war in Gaza, in Russia, with Iran, they're suddenly all on the same page. The reason's simple. War lines the pockets of the powerful. When money and power are on the line, their differences just disappear, and the rest of us will die paying the price. I hope I'm misreading all of this. I hope I'm wrong about the war stuff, and I hope that it just fizzles out, and people are like, oh man, can you believe we were so close to war, and everything just turned out to be okay? Fingers crossed. Dave says, President Biden appears on the verge of clearing the way for Ukraine to launch long-range Western weapons deep inside Russian territory, as long as it doesn't use arms provided by the United States, European officials say. Right, sure. So are they backing down? Is the United States and NATO, by extension, backing down from this plan? Keir Starmer, there's a whole thing with the Storm Shadow missiles. I think they're going ahead with that, but I don't know if they're going ahead with the U.S. Telemetry stuff. Like, they need U.S. telemetry data. So I don't know that they're going that far. It looks like maybe Biden's blinking, but maybe not. Here's Justin Trudeau when asked about this. Gov.exe says Canada has sent over $13 billion to fund a war that's gone on for years. Now Trudeau says he's willing to do more. Even though most Canadians don't want another cent going to Ukraine, anyone who wants to help should pack their bags and head to the front lines, including politicians. Actually, this isn't the clip I wanted to show you. The one I wanted to show you, this is 1:43. So this is a longer clip, but there are more tighter clips I want to show you. Ryan says, I wonder who gave Justin permission to finally say this. People think it's just a coincidence that several world leaders say on the same day that they support the use of long-range missiles into Russian territory. Who is pulling these puppet strings? And to be very clear, anybody watching, I am against a war in Russia. I don't think Russia is the bad guy here. I think NATO overstepped. NATO violated their own promises, and Russia's being backed into a corner by the West, and I don't support any of that. I think that Justin Trudeau doesn't speak for Canada or Canadians, and he's on the way out. So put the hold on that war stuff. Okay, here's Justin Trudeau, though. So 23-second Justin Trudeau warning. Oh, here we go.
Yes, Canada fully supports Ukraine using long-range weaponry to prevent and interdict Russia's continued ability to degrade Ukrainian civilian infrastructure and mostly to kill innocent civilians in their unjust war. And yes, Canada fully supports Ukraine using long-range weaponry to prevent and interdict Russia's continued ability.
When did the progressive left become the party of preventative wars? Listen, we have to bomb Russia to interdict their weapons, right? Like, it's one of those things that is just one of those. I don't believe that he even believes the justification for this. And so we are on the hook for a war. The world has gone mad, says Trudeau. Says today Canada fully supports Ukraine's use of long-range weaponry to strike into Russia. Anyone with common sense realizes this will escalate quickly into a total nuclear war. Justin Trudeau is openly supporting starting World War III. This is a 43-second expanded clip. Should we listen to it? Let's listen to it. We'll just see a little bit more color on this. So 43-second Justin Trudeau warning.
Suddenly becomes allowed to invade and redraw lines on the map. And that's why Canada and others are unequivocal that Ukraine must win this war against Russia. And
But the 2014 coup that was quarterbacked by Victoria Nuland and the State Department, right, says different, because Russia's responding to aggression from NATO. It's not like Russia was sitting around one day. Putin was bored, and he had his shotgun out and he was like, I'm sick and tired of shooting things like this. Let's go invade a country. Who should we invade? Let's do the Donbass. Let's just do it for fun. That's not what happened, right? But it's being misrepresented that way, right? And so the justification for this is weak at best. And anybody who knows history, like if you're allowed to look at history, if you're allowed to look before 2021, then all of this makes a lot more sense. And it seems like the West is lying about a lot of their involvement in getting us to where we are today.
will continue to be there to support Ukraine. And yes, Canada fully supports Ukraine using long-range weaponry to prevent and interdict Russia's continued ability.
Blah, 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 blah. Right? So Trudeau supports it unequivocally, right? CTV News is reporting it too. Trudeau says Ukraine can strike deep into Russia with NATO arms. Putin hints at war. Putin's not hinting at war. Putin's saying if NATO gives active telemetry and active aid by launching these NATO-only weapons, then they're engaging in acts of war against Russia. Russia's being very clear about this. Here's Russia. I think this is all translated, but it's 2 minutes. I think it's probably all worth listening to. Here we go.
Of our country. However, this potential development of the situation fundamentally change our relationship with the Western camp. If the decision to lift restrictions is really taken, that will mean that from that moment, NATO countries are conducting direct war with Russia. In this case, we will have to, as you understand, take the relevant decisions with all the consequences for this that the Western aggressors would incur. So washing its hand of responsibility and pinning all the blame elsewhere is something that our Western colleagues are not going to be able to do. Because we have intelligence, they say that there is intelligence from US and EU satellites. NATO military will program missile systems. We're not talking about allowing Kiev to strike long range into Russia, but rather about taking a decision to have direct strikes in the West. Whether they actually formally press the button, we're not talking about a game here. The facts are that NATO will be a direct party to hostilities against a nuclear power. I think you shouldn't forget about this and think about the consequences. The Western strategy, as we see from the US Defense Ministry documents, say that the Pentagon recently asked for a modeling of the potential impact of a nuclear war in Eastern Europe. The US has, we can see quite clearly what these discussions are based on. Madam President, without the support of the West, Kiev would never have decided to have this thoughtless invasion into the Kursk region. And we are...
So there you go. So Russia's pretty clear there what it means if the West decides to follow through with this. And is the West going to follow through with this? Keir Starmer says, through the strength of the UK-US relationship, we will deepen cooperation on shared global challenges. Our ongoing support for Ukraine is unequivocal. The need for a ceasefire deal in the Middle East is urgent. So they're going to support Ukraine forever, right? And here, these guys are being ushered out. The press is being ushered out, and a guy says, "Hey, Prime Minister, did you get permission to fire Storm Shadow missiles on Russia?" And so concerned citizen said, "Remember, everyone in this room has nuclear luxury bunkers, decades of rations, and their own personal army." I don't know that decades of rations is realistic. Like, you buy food to last for a long period of time. And then like if you don't eat it on time, like you can't have quality street stockpiled for years, because the chocolate is going to go bad and it's going to not be edible 5 years from now. Actually, it's not going to be edible next year. So like even frozen, there's a terminal velocity on how long you can keep something frozen and then thawed out. But a lot of stable food is supposed to be just kept at room temperature. So maybe like there are foods that you can keep for years, but that's not much of a life, I don't think. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm terribly wrong. Maybe they've got freezer technology worked out and the bunkers are kitted out with power that is reliable, and they've got enough diesel or whatever to run it for 20, 30 years more. And so like maybe they really aren't worried. They've got freezers full of food that's gonna last them. But I just feel like we're giving them a lot of credit where maybe not, but still they're well protected in a way that the regular population is not. Here's the question.
Thank you, Press.
Prime Minister, have you asked for permission to fire Storm Shadow missiles on Russia?
So they don't want to answer. They're just sitting there and everybody's saying, get out, Press, get out, go. Leave now, leave. John Sweeney says, read this. Ignore Putin's bluffing. Storm Shadow could change the course of the war. Oh, yes, it could. It could? We're supposed... Okay, let's risk nuclear war for the possibility of Ukraine maybe winning this war, and then what? You get to dictate terms to Putin? Okay, it seems unlikely, doesn't it? This guy says, no, Putin doesn't bluff. Go back and look up the definition of existential. Putin has already said he couldn't win against NATO's conventional force. Involving NATO in the fight now takes us directly to World War III. Idiot. I don't disagree. Howard is responding to this guy talking about the conflict, but I think this applies here. And he's talking about the invasion that we're going to be talking about in just a minute. But I think this quote applies to this situation. War is when the government tells you who the bad guy is. Revolution is when you decide for yourself, right? And so are we going to be told that the bad guy is Putin in Russia, or are we going to fix the problems in our own countries? UK, United States, Canada. Laurie Goldstein says, Canadian Army says new military sleeping bags not suitable for typical Canadian winter. I wonder if they should have just gone to Canadian Tire, says defense expert. So, right, like these sleeping bags aren't going to work, and they're actually just going to borrow from the U.S. military the sleeping bags that these sleeping bags were purchased to replace. Oh, by the way, and we bought them for $34 million. Darn. Gosh darn it, right? Oh, nuts. $34 million and they're unusable in the wintertime? Darn. So, despite the Defense Department spending more than $34.8 million on new sleeping bags, the Canadian Army asked late last year that hundreds of soldiers head to a joint northern exercise in Alaska with the Americans be issued with old 1960s vintage bedrolls. Troops who had used the recently issued General Purpose Sleeping Bag System, GPSBS, which is a ridiculous acronym. Can you get the sleeping bags? You mean the GPSBS? Yeah, the sleeping bags. Late last fall, in a preparatory exercise, found several critical issues around, according to an internal briefing note obtained by CBC News. More than 350 soldiers belonging to the 3rd Battalion of Princess Canadian Light Infantry deployed to Ram Falls Provincial Park west of Red Deer, Alberta in late November last year, where they spent several days training for northern operations. Temperature during the deployment ranged from -5 during the day to -20 at night. The critical issues discovered by the soldiers related to lack of warmth of the new sleeping bags, said the briefing note, written on December 5th, 23. The general usability of the new sleeping bag system has prompted the Department of Defense to start looking to buy additional bedrolls that can be used in the far north. During the training exercise last fall, soldiers reported that even though they used both the inner and outer shells and slept in tents heated by stoves, they were still cold. According to the internal briefing note, 3 PPCLI quartermaster concluded that the new sleeping bags were better suited to use in weather conditions that are characteristic of late spring to early fall and were not practical for typical Canadian conditions, nor the extreme cold of Alaska, where the troops deployed for further training in January. The briefing note recommended that soldiers deployed on that exercise with the US be loaned 500 of the Army's old sleeping bags, the ones that the new system was meant to replace. So, hey, do you still have those in storage? Yeah, can we get those? Yowza, right? This is related, kind of the same way that the sleeping bag story is related. War, preparedness, the Canadian military being prepared for war. Do you have enough sleeping bags? No, you don't, right? And so we're not prepared for war. It doesn't seem like we're prepared for war, but Justin Trudeau's posturing like we're ready to go and, bring it on, Russia. We'll fight you to the end for our pal Ukraine here. And, Ukraine's not even in NATO. So it's a very strange thing that we're being thrown into a war footing situation when I don't think that's what most Canadians want. Why aren't we negotiating peace? Why aren't we trying to be peacemakers, right? We should be trying to be peacemakers. But anyway, this story is a similar one. We're sending deployment to a military patrol plane and 50 personnel to Japan. I just thought that was weird, right? Like, considering all the problems we've got a plane to go to Japan, and apparently this is to counter North Korea. Canada will be sending a military patrol plane and approximately 50 personnel to Japan this month to support international sanctions on North Korea following that country's recent ballistic missile test, Defense Minister Bill Blair announced Friday. North Korea reportedly fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles into the Sea of Japan on Thursday, according to a statement from the South Koreans' military Joint Chiefs of Staff. Blair said it's now more important than ever to boost defense ties between Canada and Japan in light of the North Korean threat. And so that's pretty interesting, right? I'm interested that we have that kind of firepower. And does Japan want it? I guess so. Like, we're all friends here, right? So it seems, again, strange. Let's move on. Let's talk about the invasion ongoing. Danielle Smith says, I'd like to thank Minister Mark Miller for agreeing that your government will not relocate asylum seekers to Alberta without our full support. As I stated yesterday, until further notice, our government does not support any further relocation of asylum seekers to Alberta. We'll let you know if that changes. We would also suggest that you halt the asylum program, which has seen a massive increase over the last couple of years, so that asylum is only granted in the most extreme humanitarian-based circumstances. That is, after all, how asylum has historically been used. That does not appear to be what is happening now, and Albertans expect the federal government to manage this program properly. Mark Miller is saying there's a limit, even in politics, to making things up. We never said we'd send asylum seekers to Nova Scotia without financial compensation and without the support of the province. This is purely alarmist. Houston government sending mixed signals on immigration. And so she's saying, well, I'm glad that you're not going to do things that the provinces don't want you to do. We don't want you to do that. And also stop being a liberal, really. And here's Tim Houston. Six Buzz is reporting Nova Scotia's premier doubles down on his position that he will not accept any attempt by Ottawa to resettle thousands of asylum seekers in the province. And here's Tim Houston himself. Nova Scotians are caring, compassionate people, but we will not be taken advantage of by the federal government. The reality is that our population is growing from immigration, migration, and retention. Our immigration growth is strategic, focused on filling shortages in healthcare and trades. We have to stick to this focused plan aimed to fill strategic vacancies, and we ask that the federal government respect our plan. It is simply unacceptable for the Trudeau government to try and force thousands of asylum seekers on our province at this time. Nova Scotia simply does not have the capacity to accept thousands of asylum seekers. We cannot let the failure of federal policies derail our plan, and we have communicated to Trudeau's cabinet that any attempt to ship asylum seekers to Nova Scotia will be challenged. We are calling on the Trudeau government to drop the idea, listen to Nova Scotians, and let us focus on our strategic and sustainable plan that is attracting the professionals our province needs. So they're saying no more, no more. Will it be effective? I'm not sure. Jagmeet Singh is laser focused on people's rent. Now, this chart says that between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, Toronto's rent has only gone up 10.5% from August 2019. So this chart goes from January 2019, and it's like on the 26 side because the chart is in $500 intervals. So it starts 500,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. So at the beginning in January, it's closer to 2,600, I think. I'm just eyeballing there. And then at the end of July 2024, it's clearly at the 3,000 line, I think, right? So that's a pretty big increase anyway. But further than that, I think that rents, like, were rents in Toronto that expensive in 2019, excuse me? I don't remember, but that seems high to me. Anyway, here's Eric. He says, one of the things that I talk about a lot is I feel like the people who are coming here are just as much victims of faulty advertising as the citizens in Canada ourselves. We're saddled with paying for a lot of migrants and all sorts of people who get here and don't work. But other people spend their life savings to come here, get here and realize that it's way worse here than it is in their home country, and they want to go home. And so, like, they're victims as well. We're being victimized. They're being victimized. Everybody's being victimized. And that's akin to some overlord shaking a jar full of red and black ants. The red and black ants just want to be left alone, man. I'm just building my ant thing here. And when somebody shakes the jar, you're like, it had something to do with those other ants. Those other ants did it, right? And so that's not really the case. I mean, to a degree, the government of Canada ants were using the government of Canada assets to advertise falsely to people around the world. Come to Canada, it's a great place to be. And they get here and they're like, how much is rent? How much is food? What are you talking about? I used to be able to afford everything my family needed on one salary, and now that's not true. And this is a better life? Are you kidding? It's crazy. And I think that I feel bad because I've told people have asked me, how's Canada? Like, I work internationally is not the correct word, but like, I work with people from around the world. Often I interact with them for tools and other things. And so somebody was asking from Sweden, I think it was, or Switzerland. I always get them confused. I think it was Sweden. Anyway, he was asking, is Canada a great place to be? I've got an opportunity, blah, 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 blah. And I said, it's really not. I said, you shouldn't come here. And not because I don't like people. I said, I love people to come here, but like, don't come here. It's not a good place to be. And I shared a couple of things. This was not that long ago. I was doing my show. I was like, if you really want an inside look into Canada, you should watch my show. But the too long didn't read is that there are rooms being rented for $600 a bed in the room, and there's 3 beds in the room. And he said, what? And I sent him a Kijiji thing, and he said, I'm not going to Canada. And I said, that's probably a good idea. You should do something else. So, and I mean, like, Sweden's not without its issues. I digress. Here is a firsthand story from somebody else. Eric says, the Canadian economy is getting so bad that even newly landed immigrants are regretting coming here. I work with a Nigerian guy who brought his entire family here for a better life. In this case, they found the grass wasn't greener on the other side. Suddenly, he realized that his wage was only enough to cover his rent. Back home, his income was enough to care for his entire family. He spent his first months here starving so his wife and kids could eat. Now, his wife needs work. His wife needs to work out of necessity instead of focusing on raising their kids. Right? We've been sold a lie, the West. Now, distraught, both him and his wife are regretting coming here. Worse, they can't afford to return. They spent their life savings to live in Canada. Stories like this are all too common thanks to the Liberals' morally bankrupt policies. Our economy is a Ponzi scheme preying on newcomers to artificially inflate real estate and rent prices. And the thing about a Ponzi scheme is that when it collapses like unpredictably. It collapses monetarily in an unpredictable way for the people who are holding the notes. Like, you think that you're top of the Ponzi scheme, you're getting lots of money coming in, everybody's joining in, everything's great, Ponzi scheme's expanding, everything's good, right? But when it starts to collapse, it really starts to collapse, and when it collapses, it's done. And it's you can't hide that, I don't think, from the people in the scheme. And so I think our economy is like that. And if we stop bringing these people in, if we stop with the immigration, I think one of the first things that newly elected leaders get schooled in is, hey, guess what? We've got you over a barrel. And if you try and enact these specific policies, it's not going to work because we're going to tank your economy. Your economy is going to be destroyed, period. So, it's one of those things that I don't know, but I speculate based on their behavior. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting indeed. Let's move on. Dominic says, Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, says deporting illegals is not good policy. These people are all maybe aware of something we're not, right? Like, maybe the reason it's not good policy is because it'll collapse the economy. Who knows?
And by the way, forgive me, I was speaking of operational reality. I was talking about practicality. I was not talking about policy. I didn't address the fundamental issue of whether that is good policy.
Do you want to say whether or not it's good policy?
It is not good policy. And by the way,
Cut the clip off there. That's good. It's not good policy, according to him, I guess. So he must be right. White Rabbit Warrior is sharing this clip. There's two actually here, weird ones. He says, as a hunter who follows all tag and limit laws, nothing makes me more angry than poachers. It's not just Haitians eating pets. It's immigrants, these ones are Indian, blatantly ignoring our hunting laws. This should result in immediate deportation. This is in Bowmanville, Ontario. So they've got nets and they're fishing in a stream in Bowmanville. Here we go.
You guys know that's very illegal, eh? You guys know this is very illegal, what you guys are doing? What's your guys' names? You're netting fish, yeah. You're netting fish, which is extremely illegal. You go to jail for that. You guys understand that?
Okay, one. Here's Bonnie. She says, these folks were helping themselves to farmers' corn near Ponoka. The joke's on them because it's feed corn. The person who took the pick asked them if they had permission, to which they said yes. A call to the farmer showed otherwise, and they were asked to leave. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 people helping themselves to feed corn, I guess. And then they lied and said they were allowed, and they weren't allowed. Here's more than Springfield. And Michael says, not just in Springfield, found these geese this morning, all missing heads while running with my dog at a local park in Westchester, New York. So it's not just in Springfield that small waterfowl and things are being beheaded, et cetera, et cetera. Weird, right? It's very, very strange and interesting. Here's Tucker Carlson, and he says, thank you to Donald Trump for being able to talk about this on multiple levels. I thought this was pretty funny, worth a share. Here.
What Trump said about people eating.
This is actually from the Canada Poly chat. They shared it, and I thought it was hilarious. Here we go.
What Trump said about people eating pets. And there were two levels on which to enjoy this. Well, the first one, I literally enjoyed it. People were like, I can't believe Donald Trump accused people of eating pets. I was like, I love him. It's just hilarious. Who would ever say that? They're eating all the pets. So great. Thank you, Donald Trump. That was awesome. Because first of all, it makes all the right people mad. Like anyone getting red in the face over pet eating. That's not true. That's never happened. No one's ever eaten a pet. Okay. You just outed yourself. You're a liar. So that's the first thing. The second thing is now we're talking about eating pets. And so now that we are, let me just count myself as opposed. Note that if PETA doesn't endorse Trump in the next 24 hours, they're totally fraudulent. I'm serious. People have run for president in this country since the 1780s. Has any presidential candidate ever taken an unequivocal stand against pet eating? None. PETA's been waiting its entire life for this, and they still won't endorse what Trump said about people.
It's very good stand-up. It's very good stand-up, right? Like, and I mean, that's fundamentally what it is. I mean, Tucker's a good stand-up comedian. Trump is one of the best stand-up comedians out there. Honestly, I'm going to show you. He does a little rhymey, sing-songy thing for the end of the show, and it's great. And I don't know if he's practiced it or if he just did it. I can't tell. He's that smooth, and it is not easy to do what Trump does. It's not easy to do what Tucker does either, right? And so, like, it's pretty funny. I mean, that was clipped together, right? But still, top notch. Very, very funny stuff. Moving on, let's talk about our grab bag of governance. Tamara Lich says, well, that's a wrap to the longest mischief trial of all time. Check-in date November 26th to hopefully set a date for the verdict. So somebody said they're waiting for, I said, why the month-long wait for a verdict? Also, this whole thing is a travesty of justice. And somebody said the wait for the verdict is to wait out the election, I think. But I don't know if that's a good speculation or not. Possible, but there's not really an election on the horizon. If they want to wait out an election, they're going to have to wait till next year, maybe like after March. So that's grounds for dismissal right there, isn't it? Anyway, the Crown really disappointed me today, says Tamara. His remarks about the event that shall not be named being nothing more than a weekend party are indicative of a level of smugness and elitism that I could never and will never understand. People were killing themselves. Families were being torn apart. Kids were being tasered on outdoor rinks. Playgrounds were taped off with caution tape. Kids were ostracized in school and sports. People were forced to take a med to keep their jobs, homes, family, and social circles. they arrested pastors. Weekend party? And Eva Chipik weighs in on this as well. She says, if his argument is that it's a weekend party, is he saying weekend parties are criminal in Canada? And so like, that's pretty crazy too. If they support, Brian says, okay, we're going to end the show on this. Oh, 57 minutes. Good. I've got time. If it's 108, I have a problem with like going far off of politics to end the show. But this is like medium far off of politics. And the only reason it's medium far off of politics is because of COVID, right? Like we went through this on an industrial scale, on a society-wide scale. Now, what they want you to take away from this video is that everybody complies. Okay? That's what they want you to take away from this video. But what I want you to take away from this video is that in order to get everybody to comply, they had to remove the people who wouldn't. They had to. They couldn't leave Shirley or whatever her name is. There's a fifth person who comes in and she's like, F this, I'm not standing up. They remove her. Be her. Be that person. Be the person who says nope. Because if she was allowed to stay, the people would not have complied. Period. That's the important part of this video. It's not you will comply because you're idiots. It's some people will comply because they're idiots. But the second there's a person in there who says, not me, buddy. It's not happening for me. Then the rest of the people will go, oh, yeah, I could just not do this too, right? And this is how people broke out of COVID. Watch, here we go.
They've been given no instructions other than to fill out their forms. My team and I were secretly watching from another room.
The people are sitting and standing on the bell. New people are introduced, and the bell is rung in quick succession, just for people who are only listening. The guy who is only standing is now joining them and sitting.
The more socially compliant a person is, the more they're likely to look to others for signs of how to behave.
This is going to be your spot.
And the more people, the greater the pressure to join in. In this case, whether to stand.
Now, here's the other thing. They onboard these people. They control the situation. They have two people who are not actors and 3 people who are actors. The people who are sitting there before everybody gets introduced were all 3 actors. They control the situation by not introducing 10 people all at once, because 10 people all at once won't do it, right? It's very controlled. See, now there's 4 empty chairs here. So they have to make sure these 2 are complying before they add another. And
those
she's
people
like,
that didn't follow the crowd were removed.
I think we have to lose Amy, sadly.
Amy, come with me.
Once we had a full house, we got rid of the actors, leaving us with a room full of compliant people standing up and sitting down, even though nobody told them to do this.
Right? It would never have worked if they had sat all of the people all together at once, and if they had allowed people to choose their own situation. It had to be very carefully managed, like a dance. They had to do it through social pressure. And if somebody walked in and said, I don't feel any social pressure, you're not like, this doesn't bother me. You can stand and sit all you want, you crazy lunatics. I'm just going to sit here. As soon as somebody came in, they had to remove that person. They couldn't have that person in this pool because that poisons the pool. Be that person. If you take one thing away from this, be that from this video. Be that person. Take that away. That's enough of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.